Pat's money line on this one.
How much put on it?
About $800.
I bet every day.
Football season, I'm a Sundays guy.
DraftKings, Prize Picks.
Then they had this bonus bet thing come up where you bet $5, they give you $200.
I bet $550 bucks. Yeah.
Did you win that bet?
I did not.
And I've spent $800 on betting.
Thousands. Definitely thousands. Yeah.
3 to 4 grand.
But I probably spent as much as 5,000, probably won as much as 5,000.
For sure, over 10,000. Sure.
I sometimes look at my bank account, I'm like, did I really spend that much?
It's the joy of spending low money to get a big reward.
So basically like 8-leg parlays, 10-leg parlays.
A click of the fingertips to just get that dopamine hit of maybe winning a small bet.
It's definitely the parlays because you bet a smaller amount and hopefully get a bigger payout.
Yeah, I got a shirt that says no one cares about your parlay. And people still tell me about their parlays.
100% I'm addicted because I just like to bet. There's no win or lose, I just like to bet. Even if I lose, I keep on going to chase that I gotta come back. You know what I mean?
Out of pocket, I'd only put probably like $5,000, but I kept betting that over and over and over again. It's well over $100,000 and betting the same money over and over again.
We just have this gambling culture now, and we just expect it.
The WRAL documentary unit investigates the impact of legalized sports betting in North Carolina.
Sports betting won't be legal in North Carolina in time for the Super Bowl next year.
Sports betting is now legal in North Carolina, and I'm taking the Canes to win the Stanley Cup.
How gambling is reshaping its people, finances, and future.
What we've seen is, it has far, far outgrown what they initially thought would be the revenue that comes into the state. That's a success.
But honestly, the timing of sports betting was absolutely critical for us. We were in a budget crisis.
And we're already seeing the effects. And a lot of people will point to, well, hey, there's a lot more tax revenue. Sure, but at what cost?
The fastest growing addiction that is destroying young men in their 20s is online sports gambling. FanDuel is a portal to hell. DraftKings ain't king of nothing except their own pocketbook.
You don't place your first bet thinking I'm going to be the person who ends up with gambling disorder.
I didn't realize that would be the catalyst for what would eventually devolve into just an all-consuming fixation.
It's not just that I was gambling a little bit or I was gambling every day. It was that I was gambling pretty much all day, every single day.
How much were these bets?
I would probably say $200,000-300,000 on a weekend.
Who makes the industry money? It's those that have a problem gambling, or a gambling disorder.
We would not be sustainable. We would not be durable as an industry if that is the only thing we created.
People will go into crippling debt over this, and it will destroy more and more lives as time goes on.
It's like a handheld syringe.
We didn't invent gambling in North Carolina. It had been happening for well before I ever got to the legislature, and would continue whether or not we pass sports betting or not.
The truth is, this is an epidemic, and only people who have gone through it truly understand it. How much you lie. You never win as much as you win, and you lose way more than you lose.
Sports betting wasn't always so mainstream.
This current form of legalized gambling everywhere is a relatively new phenomenon.
With the exception of Nevada, sports betting was illegal until a Supreme Court decision in 2018. People still gambled, just not legally.
We didn't have phones, and we didn't have computers, and we didn't have algorithms and websites to get to.
You would hear stories of, I got a guy. You know, there's a guy at the bar, we settle up every Friday.
It was the underworld, let's be honest.
Someone will break your legs if you don't pay. I mean, there was sort of this like seedy element to it. Well, now it's just totally accepted.
Ads with huge celebrities like Kevin Hart are everywhere.
$200 instantly, just for betting $5.
Superstars like LeBron James are in DraftKings commercials.
Wait, what?
They want somebody that can run a 40, not somebody that is 40.
You're now looking at athletes who are active athletes playing the games themselves as spokespeople for platforms that offer you the opportunity to gamble.
There's no one who doesn't mention the betting lines, who the favorite is, who the underdog is. I mean, you know, it's on the crawl. UNC -3.5. I mean, the numbers just have become part of the sporting lexicon now in a way that before it was sort of like a secret. You know, some people had access to that world. Now everyone has access to it.
Thank God I'm not alive and addicted for this stage of gambling, because I would be in the gutter. My name is Aaron Ward. I'm a former National Hockey League player. So my gambling actually started early. It started in college.
Aaron Ward gambled at the University of Michigan, where he played hockey on scholarship. When he was drafted 5th overall by the Winnipeg Jets, he gambled in Detroit, where he won 2 Stanley Cups, and as a Carolina Hurricane, where he won a 3rd.
There was nothing that went on in my life at the time I was gambling that I was not thinking about gambling, period.
He placed all bets through a bookie, using a friend as the go-between.
So football was my sole addiction. It was like a passion. And I convinced myself it was a passion, but the game and the gambling had control of me.
He thought of his bets on the ice.
Oh man, well, I think about the number of times that, I mean, those LED boards that encircle the rink, where they kept the score of the college football games up there, and I was not only playing the hockey game in front of me, but I was also paying attention to the scores up there. You're not fully anywhere at all. I remember going to St. Michael's the Archangel Church, and it was a Sunday, and I'm in the pews wondering what the temperature is going to be like in Green Bay that day, because snow might adversely affect how I play that game.
Every fall, every Sunday for 20 years was spent betting on football.
But you're kind of maintaining, like, I'll play 3 games this, I'm up 10 or I'm down 10, I'll probably draw even the next one. I would probably say 200,000-300,000 on a weekend. And people are gonna be like, but again, it's, you get yourself in deep on this.
Some friends knew.
Oftentimes I was on the road, they'd benefit from the fact that I won. I'd take us out to bars, pick up the tab.
His family had no idea.
So I was married 19 years and I hid it from my wife the entire time. Were there times at which she suspected? Absolutely. The crazy part is somehow I got away with it. This is how reckless you are. I mean, there was times in which I had $20,000, $30,000 in cash and hidden in the trunk of my car, in a brick of hundreds. And hell, I was using some of my gambling earnings to put upgrades on my house. And my wife had no idea at the time how these things were being paid for, but that's how they're being paid for.
He knew he needed help after the Seahawks-Patriots Super Bowl in 2015.
I got $75,000 on the Patriots, and they're about to lose this game. I was having an out-of-body experience thinking, how the hell am I going to pay for this? So Seahawks throw the ball to the wide receiver, again, inexplicably. It gets intercepted by the New England Patriots DB, and they don't score. You have never seen someone who is not a New England Patriots fan, I'm a Lions fan, jump up and down with a level of excitement like I had in that moment. And it was around my family, and I was unable to explain that that was a $150,000 swing of an interception. Going from that fear to that euphoria required intervention, that I was out of control.
But true rock bottom came later that year.
I came home October of 2015, and I was confronted with a million of my choices.
We first told you about Aaron Ward's arrest during our news at 4 o'clock.
Ward is charged with assault on a female and interfering with an emergency communication.
I ended up going to jail for domestic over basically walking out with a computer. I spent 48 hours in jail. It played out publicly, so my kids could not hide from it. My wife at the time could not hide from it. I definitely could not hide from it. Lost my great job, and I was left to pick up the pieces. It's a tattoo on your soul. You wear that because Google never goes away. The most glamorous story when people have fall from grace is always the first story. It's not the back end. So everybody's headline about former hockey player arrested for domestic, if you really look into it, that's not what it was. The situation was also not just dismissed, but it was also expunged from my record.
Ward went through intense therapy for years at the Duke Behavioral Science Program through the NHL Players Association. He learned family history, genes, and trauma played a role in his addiction.
While I was in college, I was also sexually molested by a doctor at the school, both when I was 17 and then again my sophomore year when I was 18. I would have never come to grips with the molestation that I experienced, the narcissistic tendencies that I had as a human being.
Ward hasn't bet since that Super Bowl in 2015.
Only now do you understand the true damage you do to not just yourself, but everybody around you.
Now, Ward's underworld seemingly took over the world.
Message is, we'll give you free $5 for your first play. I mean, free money, why not? I'll just step in and play that first play. But here's the thing, it's the match needed to light the powder keg.
We're looking at a parlay, bro.
Hey, we hit right here.
They're being targeted to young adults, young males, college-age students.
The same age Ward placed his first bet.
There's so many things that go into being a young man specifically that lends itself to you're the perfect demographic that they want to touch on.
Tonight I bet Quadir's points, I bet our spread, and the under.
I took state to cover. I mean, I hope I'm wrong. It's just a hedge my happiness bet.
How often do you bet?
Whenever the day's right, whenever I got a free pick, you know, you make your money when the books give it to you.
This is in their world right now, ever present. And we're gonna have to dig a ton of kids out of credit issues.
When you take the already addictive nature of gambling, you combine it with the ease of these mobile apps and how frictionless they make it, the in-app notifications constantly badgering you, the peer pressure from your friends, and then you throw in the odds stacked against you by computers that are running these bookies now, you can't win.
Nearly 60% of North Carolina undergrads gambled in the past year.
We know that up to 13% of our college males are already suffering from at least one gambling-related harm.
Half of problem gamblers start before 25, the same age as most college seniors.
But the problem is most young guys go, I don't have a problem. I'm just hanging out with my friends. We're watching the game. What's the big deal? It's $1 here. It's $5 there. And they don't realize what's actually happening in their brain, that they are now hooked.
And I love this rush, this anticipation, this high that comes about from even just placing a bet.
Saul Malik was in college when he started betting.
And it started so innocently with a little $10 bet on a game of baseball, late season baseball game that was essentially meaningless.
Malik was living in Texas where sports betting isn't legal. He had an offshore account.
The bookie created an account for me online where I could gamble whenever I chose with a line of credit. You can bet on tennis overseas, you can bet on Japanese baseball. These were all available digitally. And with all this credit, I thought, well, dang, I can really push this and make more money, bet a few hundred.
It became all-consuming.
The frequency was daily, and not just daily, but hourly, however often I was able to, because gambling to me combined all these elements I enjoyed. Quick money, I love sports, I love feeling like a big shot.
His rock bottom was the summer of 2019.
And I would say that culmination of the debt that I was in, which was around 20 to 25 grand is what I estimate. I had no girlfriend. I was potentially not going to finish my senior year of college. My relationship with my parents was really awful.
He got help through Gamblers Anonymous and now tells his story publicly.
Because I could see that this was killing me, killing my life.
He's surrounded by sports betting every day.
I've heard a lot from young men around my age, even younger, who struggle with sports betting problems. The temptation is always out there. It is an unavoidable thing nowadays.
Coming up, how we got here, what we're getting.
End of the day, it brings so much more to our state.
And what we've lost.
It kind of feels like blood money. There's no other way to say it.
Even the lottery, I mean, North Carolina's come a long way in terms of their thinking on this, right?
North Carolina was very late in adopting the lottery, and it took shenanigans, quite frankly, at the legislature to get it to happen. Some lawmakers took a walk. They weren't there on the day it came to vote.
The president of the Senate votes aye.
The lieutenant governor cast the tie-breaking vote to get this.
Why? Because it was gambling.
It was gambling.
This was in 2005, making North Carolina the 43rd state to get a lottery. Nearly 20 years later, Representative Jason Sain was leading the charge on another form of legalized gambling, sports betting.
And it came from watching good friends of mine place bets online, which I wasn't doing, but I was watching them doing it. And so they started explaining it to me how they did it with an offshore betting account. I said, well, this doesn't seem right, that North Carolina, one, shouldn't get their fair share of the revenue from it, and two, how does it protect consumers?
Sain's first attempt to legalize sports betting was in 2022.
In a surprise vote, state house lawmakers have rejected an attempt to legalize online sports gambling.
It failed by one vote.
He tried again in 2023.
Really kind of uncovering what the real objections were and then finding ways to overcome them.
And it went through much easier.
Sports betting is now legal here in North Carolina. Governor Cooper signing that bill into law today.
The law passed in 2023, but you couldn't bet in North Carolina until the spring of 2024.
Right into March Madness.
UNC was in the Sweet 16. Duke was in the Elite 8. And when NC State made a historic run to the Final Four.
I mean, the numbers were through the roof almost immediately, and the tax revenue has far exceeded anything that they thought it would.
In 2024, the state projected $8.5 million in revenue. It actually brought in more than $41 million. The next year, projections were $53 million. The actual number, $121 million.
Kind of validates what we were saying all along, that this was happening. Just the state wasn't having any say-so in it.
The money made in taxes goes to several buckets. First, fixed amounts come off the top. $1 million each to two statewide youth sports organizations. $2 million to the Department of Health and Human Services for gambling and addiction treatment. $3.9 million split up between the athletic departments at 13 UNC colleges. After that, the remaining revenue is split by percentage. 50% goes to the general fund. That was $55 million last year.
Paying for schools and paying for roads and healthcare and things of that nature.
30% goes to the Major Events, Games and Attractions Fund. $33.4 million last year.
It was used to attract the MLS All-Star Game. It's been used to bring NASCAR races.
We can start talking things like Super Bowls. Olympics could be, on the table.
And the final 20% left over goes again to college athletics, so they get money twice.
The athletic department at 13 UNC system schools, not UNC, not NC State, but everyone else gets a share, and they got about $2 million last year.
UNC Pembroke is one of the 13 schools that receives money from sports betting.
We were in a budget crisis.
When COVID hit in 2020 and students started distance learning, that meant they stopped paying an athletic fee.
To lose $1.1 million in student fees, pretty much overnight, you can't fix that on a $5 million budget. You wouldn't be able to sustain 16 sports, 450 athletes, 70 employees.
He said money from sports betting may have saved some programs.
It's been a major blessing.
Is that now a lot of that money goes to really good programs and good things in the state.
And so the fact that states are getting some money out of this, it kind of feels like blood money. There's no other way to say it.
An irresponsible way to raise money for the state.
Democratic Representative Marsha Mori, a former U.S. Olympic swimmer, was against legalizing sports betting in North Carolina.
I believe in the purity of sports. We're finding people are fixers now, that they're enticing players to throw games.
Proponents say legalizing actually catches cheaters by using algorithms. FanDuel said they have a 600-person risk and trading team monitoring all wagers.
We really do think that this is the regulated market working, and we're hopeful that over time, as athletes see what happens, that there will be less of this going forward.
Maury is also concerned about athlete harassment.
We're seeing a huge increase of social media threats to college players.
The National Collegiate Athletic Association reports 1 in 3 college athletes have experienced betting-related harassment. Most of the harassment is over prop bets, betting on a player's points or specific plays.
Armando Bacot, a former UNC player, talked about after wins, he would get messages in his DMs on social media that would say, "You didn't grab 9 rebounds." Call him every name in the book.
I looked at my DMs and I got like over 100 messages from people telling me I sucked and stuff like that because I didn't get enough rebounds.
Kelly Crosby with the North Carolina Department of Health and Human Services said this is having a real impact.
And we have seen an increase in mental health symptoms in our athletes. That's just what the research is showing us.
Jason Sane, lawmaker turned lobbyist, said criticism comes with the territory.
Athletes are in the public sphere. They're going to get criticized, period. The end. That happened before sports betting. It will happen after sports betting. That's just part of being in a public sport.
So the argument that this would have happened anyway.
So the fact that we would kind of just say, well, it exists anyway, and be okay with that, we're not okay with it, number one. We are not okay with it at all. So we're definitely not okay with the fact that we've introduced something that's even making it worse.
Sports betting platforms will ban users caught harassing athletes. The NCAA has urged states to stop allowing prop bets on college players.
Prop bets are so lucrative and become such a part of betting that I don't think operators are going to willingly give that up.
Maury sponsored 2 pieces of legislation banning prop bets. Neither made it out of committee.
I would say just keep our lottery. Vote on the bouncing balls. Don't vote on the athletes.
Coming up, what if sports betting is just the beginning?
The only limit is your imagination to what you can do on these predictive markets.
It was accessible before.
One of the main arguments that helped push sports betting across the finish line in North Carolina, gambling was already happening.
That money was going out of the state to begin with. That money was being spent. We haven't really necessarily changed behaviors, except for the fact that we've offered now something that's legal and a way to capture that revenue and keep it back into the state.
Sports betting companies say billions of dollars are still being spent on illegal sites. The American Gaming Association estimates a total of more than $670 billion in illegal and unregulated total wagers. But again, that number comes from the industry.
And so they say, oh, everyone was going to an offshore book and black market and gambling, so we're just doing it now and collecting the tax revenue. Well, I was, but I'm a gambling addict. And I think that they're basically asserting that their standard customer was doing the things that a gambling addict would do to gamble.
So yes, I will concede the fact that you could already gamble, but we've just made it easy, accessible, highly desirable, highly attractive to anyone.
According to NCDHHS, calls to the state's gambling hotline are up since legalization.
We've seen a 50% increase in the number of people over the past 2 years who call for help, not just call for information, they're literally calling for help. We've seen a 400% increase in the number of people texting.
Joe Maloney, president of the Sports Betting Alliance, represents the 5 major sports books.
Data such as increased call spike volume to 1-800-GAMBLER or other problem gambling helplines is not necessarily anything to be afraid of.
Maloney says it shows people know where to turn for help and allows states to make sure those support systems are properly staffed and accessible. The money used to fund the state's gambling addiction program comes from sports betting. In 2025, the 8 legal sports betting companies in North Carolina made $734.5 million. The state made $132.2 million. DHHS got $2 million for problem gambling.
I mean, we're talking 1% of the money, 2% of the money going to the Department of Health and Human Services.
Do you think maybe you could use a little more?
Yes, I definitely say, and again, I don't mean to be ungrateful for the $2 million that we get, but it truly is, it pales in comparison to the amount of revenue that's coming into the state.
And unfortunately, the $2 million that they have going to DHHS, the vast majority of that is going towards treatment and some education, but it's not enough to support everything.
Michelle Malkin is the director of Gambling Research and Policy Initiative at East Carolina University.
The federal government has put zero money into gambling-related research. It's crazy when you compare that to other addictions and how much money that goes into that.
Researchers say people just don't know enough about gambling addiction.
So really, from a scientific brain chemistry point of view, there is no difference when we're talking about gambling addiction and substance use disorder. However, gambling disorder in and of itself has the highest suicide rate of any addictive disorder, bar none.
The sports betting companies say they don't want their customers to become addicted.
As a whole, legal regulated gambling throughout this country invests nearly $500 million annually to responsible gaming. We are in the business of creating sustainable levels of play for all players.
Maloney points to wager limits, time restrictions, or self-exclusion on the apps.
I know I would be in a gutter if I had the accessibility that people do now.
A lot of people relapse. It's a hard addiction to stay away from because gambling is everywhere.
38 states offer sports betting. Many believe it's just the beginning. 7 states now allow online casinos, also called iGaming,
which is basically a full casino on your phone. You'd be able to play blackjack or roulette or craps, poker maybe, on your phone for real money. And the money to be made from iGaming just dwarfs anything that is being made from sports betting.
FanDuel operates sports betting in 25 states and iGaming in 5. It's not legal in North Carolina.
The reality is, just like with sports wagering, iGaming is happening because the internet and mobile devices exist. There are any number of offshore sites where one can do iGaming, and we really believe that we can offer it with our robust suite of consumer protections.
And then there are prediction markets like Kalshi, where you can bet on anything.
They say they're not sports gambling, in part because the house is not holding the bets. It's kind of like a stock market where you're betting against others in the stock market. And so you can bet whether a team's going to win or a team's going to lose, or you can bet the price of oil on a certain date in the future. It's just rife for insider trading. I see a future where gambling on everything becomes part of our culture. The only limit is your imagination to what you can do on these predictive markets. You know, it's a slippery slope, and one I think we're involved in already.